Hello Biblionauts, I am still here. I was not expecting to make any more videos from Spain, but let's say that what I was searching for when I left on the road trip that I left you on, I found. And that is to say that one of the most significant projects that I talked about on my 2024 projects video is pretty much about to be fully realized. So yeah, I'm spending here a couple more days so that we can do all the paperwork and I can start paying for the mountain refuge and piece of land that I have been searching for years, actually. But this is not a video about my life. This is a video about Hegel's phenomenology of spirit. It's not following from the previous video, but I realized that I was maybe going a bit too fast, just sort of like reading through and summarizing paragraphs. So I sat down and thought, and also consulted a lot of other sources. I will link in the description what I consider to be the best channel in English language for understanding this book, which is, I believe, Gregory D. Sadler or G. Sadler. It's very helpful. I know way more channels in Spanish, so if any of you has Spanish as their first language or prefers it, I could also send you links for other lectures and material, especially audiovisual material when it comes for this. Of course, maybe I will make a specific video about secondary reading. I am not a fan of secondary reading, but I do know a lot of books that are highly recommended by many people, and I have read one of them, which is not a lot, but I can also help you with that if you are a believer in secondary reading. I understand why you would be. I agree with sort of like, it makes sense when it comes to philosophy to do secondary reading because as opposed to pretty much every other form of book, when you come into a philosophical classic, you kind of want to arrive at it with as many prejudices as you can, with as many preconceptions as you can, so that you don't fall in common places and you can maybe develop newer ideas. However, I also think that to properly assess the quality of a book, you have to take it for what it is. And although this is not a critique on Hegel, this series of videos are not me criticizing Hegel, are me trying to understand him, I want to also arrive at a conclusion about Hegel and not Hegelians. And if I now read 10 different books to indoctrinate myself on Hegelianism, I will definitely come on the other side believing that Hegel and what he wrote was amazing. So I much rather read Hegel first for what it is, and try to understand the pages, because I don't think that anything that can be written in a page is, unless it's entirely solipsistic or makes no sense, I don't think that anything that has meaning in it cannot be unfolded by anyone if they read it closely enough. So, not even Hegel. And because of that, I am just using this. And as a supplement, I do watch lectures, and I have not watched anything in English. The ones I'm gonna link in the description from Gregory G. Sadler or D. Sadler. I'll put his channel and his playlist with hundreds of videos on Hegel on the description. Was the one I consulted the first time I read this book. But this is the second time, and I wanted to search for something else, so I moved into my other languages. So yeah, that's all I have to say as a prelude to this video. This video, I am not gonna be moving forward on the book itself, page by page or anything like that. On the other hand, I'm gonna go through notes that I have been writing, thoughts, and trying to give you an overview of the foundations of this book through a different lens, and and yeah, some of the key concepts, contrasting Hegel and his thought with not his contemporaries but his predecessors. So this is probably gonna be a long video, and I'm gonna be reading a lot from my notes, so it might not be the most engaging, but it's probably so far the most helpful video to understand Hegel out of the 3 I've made so far. So I encourage you to bear with me. So another thing is that my notes are not always in English, so I am also translating as I go, and I might not use the same concepts or the same terminology that I should be using once we speak in English. But it's not the appropriate terminology that I'm trying to get at, is the right meaning behind whatever concept or claim we are trying to get at. So the first thing is that sort of following from not only the previous Kantian tradition and in Cartesian, philosophy has always been trying to get at the truth of reality, right? And at some point, one can arrive at the conclusion of, like, if the certainty of the senses, if certainty is the object of the senses, if that is the purpose of the senses, then one should not think or categorize in any way. But if what we're trying to do is describe the sensible world, the sensory world, because certainty is the function of the senses, then we should not categorize in any form at all, unless we want to distort reality, unless we want to distort the particularity. This is partially what we see before Hegel, but also afterwards. This is sort of a premise. It's like a premise to Russell's own view on his own not empiricism, but this is a very empiric view, approach to the natural world. What this means is that if we don't want to categorize or rationalize reality, because the truth of the book is not the word book, because the book is composed by a bunch of things, and the wholeness that we see, remember the bud, the flower, the plant. The plant is a construct that comes from uniting conceptually all the different parts that it has, the leaf. And people like Russell kind of like moved against that and would say something like, what we need to describe are the objects for what they are in their particularity. So if you have a table, you can talk about its shape, its size, its color, the things that come directly to you through sensory perception. Russell would say, we have knowledge, we have direct knowledge of something when we know directly what it is, without the intermediary of any process of inference or any knowledge of abstract truths. Now, this might seem correct. He says, if I see a table again, is only starting from its the atomic data that it gives me, every single specific thing that comes to me. But the word table is the concept that emerges from that and is further from the truth than all of those particularities. Those particularities are therefore independent from each other. And this is opposed, this is completely different from what Hegel is defending, which he wants, his philosophy of the absolute wants to look at the plant as a whole. Russell at some point referred to Hegel as, he called his philosophy an sort of like a weird illogic, and of course in contrast with his own philosophical clarity. But that main claim that Russell used to sort of refuse Hegel is refuted in the first 7 pages of the phenomenology. And that's what we're gonna be talking about from now on. So I personally don't. I think Russell was. I like Russell, and I love his the way he wrote, especially. I think that he's one of the very few philosophers that wrote quite well. Those claims that I was talking about before is on his book, The Problems of Philosophy, or the Problems of Philosophy, and the things that he misses out when he's saying that is that the adjectives that he presents for his description of objects are general concepts. When you say that a table is square, when you say that it's big or small, when you say that it's brown or blue, those are not concepts that are specific to the table. You are not closer to the table for saying that. As a matter of fact, you are further away from it because they are general concepts. You can apply them to anything else. If the table is brown, so is this book. If the table is squared, so it's this self. And therefore they're universal. They are universals. You were searching for a particular and you ended up further away from everything. And if they can be applied to all of that, then they are not specific to the object that you're trying to grasp. If consciousness insists on referring to an object only through sense perception, only through the direct contact to that object, then the unique form of consciousness, the only form that consciousness has of pointing at that object is for what it is, referring to it as this. So if we were to be consistent with that logic of only sense perception really grasps the object, no adjective would be enough, because every adjective is general, is universal, can be applied to anything. You would have to jump into adverbs. You have to say this. I cannot describe the book, because the moment I start describing the book, if I say book, then you have Russell's refutation against the concept of the whole. But if I follow Russell's presentation of the book as all of its parts and all of its particularities, and say yellowish, says Hegel on the cover, it's rectangular, it has so many pages, you find billions of examples of those things in other objects that are not this. Only this is this, which is to say that you are reducing the object to the here and now. So this is what Hegel means when he says that the object is the pure this. An object then is absolute particularity, the this, and the concept is the product of sense certainty. Everything that is not this is the concept, is sense certainty. The thing is that sense certainty is based on the context that is particular, that in the particular context, but is not invariable. It's not even individual. Here, which is what we were coming at now, the here that is implicit in this, can be referring to you. You can be referring to this screen. I say this in relation to my here. My here is the phone that I'm recording myself with. This. But this here is also everything else that is here. So if I turn myself, here is also the self. So saying here that part of the this is not enough. It's not really particular to the object either. The here can be referred to every single thing that is contained within it, and it's just a relational distance that you have with something. But there's many heres around me at the moment. The context, just like any other adverb, is not intrinsic to the object, but can be applied to many individuals. Thus, the properties of the context are universal. The universal is therefore the truth of the certainty. The universal is the truth behind the uncertainty. So from the particular we are taking the universal. The consciousness attempts to refer to the object in its particularity, and in doing that, ¿puedes bajar el volumen? I don't think she hears me. I hope you don't mind the music. Maybe it will give it a more dramatic touch to the video. Okay, yeah. So the consciousness attempts to refer to the particular, but in doing that, finds the universal, and which is to say that the universal is born from the negation of the particular. I'm gonna close the window for clarity's sake. It's not like these windows are very well sealed, but I hope that the noise will not be as much now. So this is the consciousness that attempts to express itself through a now and here. This is not the now, this is not the here in the particular, this is not this, but this is a not this, which is to say that the difference between here, between this, and that this, between the now, this now, and the now that is right now, is the negation of all of those things. So, and this is pretty much where dialectics comes in. The phone that I'm recording myself with is defined by being not this, not anything else. If the knowledge of the object, as individual in particular, is not generated by the object, then it is generated by the subject. And here, well, I mean, this is what this is sort of how it follows for Hegel, and that's why after addressing the object, he focuses on the subject and says, why? Because the context changes, the consciousness experiences all of these changes of a state. They come and go, but the subject remains, and this is the reason why we change to the subject now. Because if I'm referring to the phone, and I cannot refer to it for all the adverbs given by sense certainty, and I can also not refer to it by its adverbs, by its more specific presence, this, meaning here and now, because the here and now is also ever changing, then who is the witness to all of that? The subject. I am the one who connects the previous now with this now. And this is this is where the true universality of the I appears. Is the only one that is manifested in every case, because the particularity is self-negating, and in both cases, when the object was the essence of certainty and when the subject was, they both became universals, because insofar as the subject is present in every single instance and the subject is also a generality, they both become universals. Which is to say that they are not individual, I'm following from the notes, so I'm trying to not be redundant and repeat something that I already said. That's why I'm skipping some paragraphs. Then the certainty in what otherwise would be the comparison between different moments is found in the relation, in the indissoluble relation between both subject and object, because both subject and object are present. The object is other, is a different object in the previous now and this now. The subject is witness to both, but to both of them. But the subject can also be reduced to the universality given in the critique to sense perception. So the truth of the object, the truth of reality could be, the certainty could be only found in the intersection between both of them, or in the dialectic, in the conversation, in the interaction between both. Neither of them can exit its own particularity in the relation between the two. This is the whole, this is the absolute that is constituted in such relation. This could bring us back to the belief that sense certainty is the right way to approach to understand the world. However, to demonstrate the relation of subject and object is the essence of sense certainty, and Hegel renounces to language and points in the direction of that certainty, because within language one would get trapped again in the same trap. And what we are referring here with pointing at and escaping language is the dialectics of the transformation of one thing into another. The reason why in the dialectic, I have to negate this object as the object that I was referring to, because in the change of here and now, I am not in the same position I was before, and this is not the now that was then. The object is not the same in its referential status towards the world. So the dialectics of transformation is going to be a negation of the previous now, no? So and now I'm about to repeat myself again. The consciousness begins pointing at the now, this now, but in pointing at it, in the time that it takes to point at this now, it already ceases to exist, and that now can be now maintained in contact with cannot now keep the contact that it had with consciousness, because there is a new now that has emerged, and that which was pointed at, therefore, is overcome. The German word is aufgehoben, I think, which has three meanings. It can be cancel, preserve, or overcome. It's important to also know that in philosophy, the fact that the change of language is much more relevant than in other linguistic disciplines. So the engine of the dialectic is the negation, and such negation emerges from such a negation of the first assertion, a second truth emergence, the truth that the first truth has been overcome. But the first truth cannot be overcome because the now is always now. And that's where the third part, the negation of the negation, appears, which is a return to the now that was negated in the first place. But this now, this present, is not the same because it cannot be. It's not the now that we have now. It's not the now that we started at when this video began. And that means that within itself, you already have a reflection of itself contained. Yeah, so because this new affirmation is not equivalent to the first one, and because the now that is now is not the one that was, the constant negation of that which has been generates a continuum of nows, and that now is the one that contains the reflections of itself. The incapacity of consciousness of showing an instant, immediate now that is complete is the same that impedes us from pointing to a here that is atomic, complete, and absolute in itself. Absolute sounds contradictory. Atomic and complete, and a here that is an absolute here that requires of no reference outside of itself. All heres are up and down, front or back, and the left or right of something. And that is to say that certainty that we can or cannot acquire, that object is the product of a dynamic relation. This is the critique and the presentation of Hegel. Not only of he doesn't just critique Russell's certainty without even knowing about Russell, but also he is more consciously responding to the kaleidoscopic view or artificial necessity presented for a method that a Kant or Descartes had, where they wanted to, let's create a method to explain reality and then focus on that method and continue it. They barely grasp a fragment of the real, because the real is that constant changing, and that constant is the product of that constant changing, but the product itself is also changing. And that is what I wanted to say. That is my little summary of my notes and thoughts, and I hope it was helpful. I will go back to the book and bring you some more paragraphs and break them down with you in the next week or so. I don't know, I'm flying soon, so I'll be back in my not comfort zone, because the UK or anywhere that lacks sun will never be my comfort zone, but I'll be in a place where I'm much more able to make this kind of videos and do this kind of readings. So until then, take care of yourself, read, write, and I'll see you on the other side.